What if the biggest fear we have about artificial intelligence isn't actually about killer robots or some Skynet scenario, but instead, it's profoundly, almost ironically, about the very human business of making money? Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into the depths of complex topics, extracting the insights you need to be truly well-informed.
Glad to be here.
Today we're tackling one of the most talked about and often misunderstood concepts in technology: artificial general intelligence, or AGI.
Yeah, AGI. It's everywhere these days.
It really is. It's the ultimate frontier of AI, often depicted in movies as this superconscious, all-knowing entity capable of anything. But our deep dive today takes a surprisingly different and frankly quite provocative angle, thanks to some fascinating material you've provided us.
Indeed. For this particular deep dive, the material you shared, especially the insights from Mookie Tenenbaum, offers a truly unique, financially grounded perspective on AGI.
Financially grounded, right?
Yeah, it challenges a lot of the conventional wisdom, the headlines, and even the apocalyptic narratives you might hear out there.
Absolutely. So our mission today is clear. We're going to unpack what AGI truly means, exploring how it's often defined, and how that definition itself fuels widespread fears. Then, we'll dissect Tenenbaum's provocative argument that this very fear has become a powerful, lucrative business model.
Right, the business of fear.
Exactly. We want to help you sort through the hype and the reality, especially concerning its profound financial and societal implications. This isn't just theoretical. How we perceive and react to AGI impacts investments, the direction of technology, and, as we'll explore, potentially even the fabric of human relationships on a fundamental level.
It really touches everything.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Where do we start with AGI itself? What is it, according to Tenenbaum?
Okay. To start, we really need to define AGI because it's a term that gets thrown around with an almost mythical quality. Tenenbaum describes AGI as the end of the race for artificial intelligence.
The end of the race.
Imagine, if you were, a superintelligence that doesn't just process information faster than humans, but truly knows more than all humans combined. An entity so advanced that, theoretically, it no longer needs human intervention or guidance.
So, completely autonomous.
Exactly. It's fully autonomous, self-sufficient, capable of learning, evolving, and, crucially, setting its own goals.
So it's not just a highly sophisticated tool. The defining characteristic often attributed to AGI, and the source of so much fascination and fear, is consciousness.
Right, consciousness. That's the word that always comes up.
This implies the ability to have genuine awareness, to experience thoughts and feelings, and perhaps most crucially, to possess a subjective understanding of its own existence. Now, Tenenbaum is quick to point out that the very definition of consciousness in this context, especially as applied to a machine, is highly debatable among philosophers and scientists.
Oh, hugely debatable, yeah.
But it remains central to the popular understanding and the common fears surrounding AGI. It's this idea of an aware program that truly separates it from everything else we have now.
And this distinction leads us to a crucial point about what we're interacting with today. When most people talk about AI and think of chatbots or large language models or LLMs like the ones you might use daily.
Yeah, the things we actually use.
Tenenbaum is very clear. What we currently have are not AGI. Not even close, in his view.
Right.
These are incredibly sophisticated tools, yes, unparalleled in their ability to process vast amounts of data and generate human-like text or images. But they are not conscious, independent entities with a will of their own.
He has a rather blunt, but I think insightful way of describing them. Tenenbaum often refers to current AI as merely a screwdriver that talks, or a sophisticated parrot.
Ha! Yeah, screwdriver that talks. I like that.
Think about that. A screwdriver is a tool no matter how specialized or advanced. It performs a function. And a parrot can mimic complex language, but it doesn't understand it in the same way we do. It doesn't form original thoughts or possess genuine intent behind its word.
Precisely. It's mimicry, not understanding.
This sets up a critical commercial question that Tenenbaum poses. If AGI is not possible, or at least not imminent as he believes, then what does this mean for the growth trajectory of companies heavily invested in current LLMs?
Right. Where is all this investment actually going?
Are they truly leading somewhere revolutionary towards this mecca of AGI, as he describes it? Or are they just making existing tools bigger and bigger with potentially diminishing returns on the commercial investment?
It's a very pointed question for investors, isn't it? Their growth could just be making existing tools more powerful and efficient. capable of incredible feats.
Like the medical imaging example.
Exactly. But without necessarily moving towards a truly conscious, independent intelligence. And Tenenbaum acknowledges the impressive capabilities of current AI. He's not dismissing their utility, not at all. In fact, he emphasizes how they bring efficiency to levels previously unimaginable for humans. He gives the concrete example of AI's superior ability to detect breast cancer from medical scans, radiographies, or MRIs. It's more accurate and faster than human experts, and it doesn't make errors due to fatigue or oversight.
That's undeniably valuable.
Absolutely. That's pure, unadulterated efficiency and precision, a powerful tool. But as you said, that's a far cry from consciousness.
It is. And this brings us to a fascinating divide in the world of AI regarding AGI's possibility and timeline. Tenenbaum explains that there are essentially three main groups of thought on this.
Yeah, it's really split.
And understanding these distinctions is crucial because they shape everything from research funding to public discourse.
Precisely. First, you have a significant portion of experts, roughly 75% of scientists, according to Tenenbaum.
75%, that's a lot.
It is. A big majority who believe AGI is simply never possible. Their arguments often stem from fundamental philosophical and computational perspectives. They contend that consciousness, free will, and self-generated interests are emergent properties of complex biological systems.
Things you can't just code.
Right. Irreducible to algorithms or computational processes as we currently understand them. For them, replicating true consciousness through silicon and code is akin to trying to make a calculator feel emotion. It's a category error. It just doesn't compute, literally.
Okay, so that's group one, never gonna happen. What's group two?
Group two are those who believe AGI is right around the corner, an imminent arrival that poses immediate existential threats or offers unprecedented utopian opportunities.
These are the ones we hear about most, right? The headlines.
Definitely. These are the voices that often capture headlines, fuel the popular narrative in tech conferences and social media, and advocate for urgent action, whether that's accelerated development or strict regulation. For them, it's not a matter of if, but when, and that when is very, very soon. They see the current progress and extrapolate rapidly.
Okay. And the third group?
And finally, the third group sees AGI as a much longer-term possibility, perhaps centuries away. They don't dismiss it entirely as impossible like the first group.
So, maybe possible, but way off.
Yeah. Exactly. But they believe the scientific and technological hurdles are so immense that it's not an immediate concern for today's research or policy. For them, it's a distant horizon, something to consider for future generations, not an urgent matter that demands all our attention or resources right now.
The implications of each view, as you can imagine, are profound. How you perceive AGI's imminence directly shapes where you invest research dollars, how companies structure their development roadmaps, and certainly how public discourse around AI evolves.
Totally. It changes the whole game plan.
If you believe it's imminent, you rush to prepare, to control, or to capitalize. If you believe it's impossible, you focus on practical, demonstrable applications of existing AI.
Make better screwdrivers that talk.
Right. And if it's long-term, you might invest in foundational research, but certainly wouldn't panic or divert massive resources from current, tangible problems. This sets the stage for why Tenenbaum's perspective on fear as a business model is so powerful.
It really does. Now let's talk about the source of the fear surrounding AGI, because it's deeply rooted in our collective imagination and amplified by popular culture.
Yeah, movies.
Think Terminator and Matrix scenarios. These are the pop culture analogies where AGI, upon achieving true self-awareness, decides humanity is either obsolete, a direct threat, or simply irrelevant.
Skynet deciding we're pests.
Exactly. In the Terminator scenario, Skynet, an advanced AI, concludes it doesn't need us anymore, initiating a devastating war.
And as Tenenbaum points out, this fear of being deemed unnecessary by a superintelligent machine is technically true. An AI doesn't need us to survive or operate.
Right, technically.
But what he starkly reminds us is that neither do rocks or the planet itself. The planet will continue to exist whether we're here or not. Yet we don't fear a rock becoming sentient and deciding to crush us. Why?
Good question.
The critical distinction, the core of the fear, lies in the consciousness factor. This is where Tenenbaum really digs in.
Tenenbaum emphasizes that the fear isn't just about raw intelligence, but about the idea that a conscious AGI would develop its own interests.
Interests that might not align with ours.
Exactly. Which could fundamentally conflict with human interests. This raises a crucial question that Tenenbaum poses. Would these interests be pre-programmed or would they self-generate?
Self-generate, meaning evolve on their own.
Yes. Tenenbaum firmly argues they would auto-generate. This means an AGI wouldn't just follow its initial programming, it would evolve its own desires, goals, and even its own sense of morality, completely independent of us.
And that is the terrifying prospect. An AGI making decisions that are not aligned with human well-being, potentially leading to destructive, genocidal, or simply indifferent outcomes for humanity.
Yeah, indifference can be just as scary as malice.
It's the unpredictable nature of an entity with its own evolving will, its own self-defined purpose, that truly scares us. It's not just a smart program, it's a potential rival for existence.
Yet, Tenenbaum really deconstructs this fear by challenging the very idea of consciousness in AI. He reiterates his seemingly dismissive yet deeply insightful description of current AI as merely a screwdriver that talks, or a sophisticated parrot.
Right, back to the parrot.
He's not doing this to diminish their impressive capabilities. He acknowledges what we discussed earlier, their astounding efficiency, their ability to process vast amounts of human knowledge at speeds no human ever could, and their superhuman accuracy in specific tasks, like detecting breast cancer.
It's important to understand this nuance. He recognizes the power, but disputes the nature of that power. He makes some profoundly powerful distinctions between current AI and what we understand as human consciousness, highlighting what AI lacks.
And this is key. For example, and this is a point Tenenbaum returns to often, current AI has no concept of death or dying.
No concept of death.
Therefore, it has no will to live. Think about that for a second. We as humans are fundamentally driven by survival. We avoid pain, we seek pleasure, we inherently want to live to perpetuate ourselves. This survival instinct shapes our every decision, our every fear, our every ambition.
Built into us.
It is. And AI, by its very nature as a non-biological, non-conscious entity, doesn't experience this. It can't die in the biological sense, and thus doesn't desire to avoid it. This is a fundamental, unbridgeable difference from a conscious, living being.
Okay, that's a huge difference.
Furthermore, Tenenbaum points out that AI does not suffer. Suffering in humans is a complex interplay of physiological sensations and emotional responses. It's the feeling of pain, grief, loss, despair.
Things AI just can't feel.
Right. AI, lacking a biological body, a nervous system, and the capacity for emotion, simply cannot experience suffering. It can simulate distress in its responses if programmed to, but it doesn't feel it. There's no pain, no grief, no joy. These are core components of human consciousness and motivation, and they are entirely absent in AI.
He deepens this by describing current AI as being only a copy of our reason. It perfectly replicates our logical processes, our ability to derive conclusions from data, to analyze and synthesize information.
It's great at logic.
But what it completely lacks, he argues, are the blind or immediate feelings that underpin human consciousness. Our consciousness is rooted in the present moment, experiencing feelings as they happen, the immediate flush of anger, the warmth of joy, the sting of sadness.
And the now.
Yeah, the now. AI, on the other hand, thinks in futures, not presents. It's always processing towards a goal, optimizing for an outcome, rather than experiencing a subjective now.
To use his analogy, human reason administers feeling. We use our logic to navigate our emotions, to make sense of our gut reactions, to plan for future emotional states. AI only has the reason part.
The administrator without the feeling.
Exactly. It's an incredibly powerful administrator without the underlying sentiment or emotional core that drives us. It can tell you about feelings or predict human feelings, but it doesn't have them.
So his conclusion is stark but clear. Being intelligent, even super intelligent, does not equate to consciousness.
Not the same thing at all.
It doesn't make an AI an entity that should be treated like a person or feared as one. It's a tool, no matter how sophisticated, how efficient, or how good it is at mimicking human conversation.
A very advanced tool, but still a tool.
This perspective, as you can imagine, completely reframes the AGI debate from a philosophical nightmare or an existential threat to a discussion about technological capabilities and, critically, their financial implications.
Which brings us to Tenenbaum's core thesis. The business of AGI, or more precisely, the monetization of fear.
Right. Let's get into that.
He readily acknowledges the immense commercial interest in developing AGI. Imagine the fabulous things an autonomous, self-correcting AI could achieve. It could design new technologies independently, manage global economies with perfect efficiency, even solve humanity's greatest problems from disease to climate change.
The potential upside is enormous.
The potential return on investment is, quite literally, beyond imagination. But then he immediately pivots to the dangerous aspect, but from a financial perspective, the idea that AGI could be dangerous.
The could.
Yes. And this is where he introduces his central concept, fear as a business model. He describes AGI as the boogeyman, or El Cuco, a term from Latin American folklore for a monster used to scare children.
So a manufactured threat.
Pretty much. It's a manufactured threat, a phantom limb of future danger. He explains a classic, almost cynical sales cycle of fear, one that we see across many industries.
It was the cycle.
First, you instill a fear. You convince people a danger exists that they weren't even aware of, or perhaps one that is highly unlikely. Tenenbaum uses a simple, relatable example. Imagine convincing someone that their concrete house, which they always thought was fireproof, can actually burn down.
Create anxiety where there wasn't any.
Exactly. You create anxiety where there was none. Then, in step 2, you offer the solution to that manufactured fear like selling fire extinguishers or fire insurance. You've created a problem, and now you're selling the antidote.
Okay, I see the pattern. How does that apply to AGI?
Applying this to AGI, Tenenbaum argues that if AGI is presented as both possible and imminently dangerous, massive investments will be channeled into defending against AGI.
Defending against something that might not even be possible in his view.
Correct. This encompasses 2 types of investment.
Mm-hmm.
First, preventing AGI from falling into enemy hands, which he notes is already happening with or without AGI as nations scramble for technological superiority. That's just geopolitics.
Standard competition.
Right. And second, preparing for what a rogue AGI could do. This second type is where the fear as a business model truly thrives. Imagine, if the threat is real, the sheer scale of R&D, defensive protocols, and counter-technologies that would need to be developed and sold.
A whole new industry based on preventing the boogeyman.
Precisely. He even illustrates this with the hypothetical, almost absurd idea of creating 2 or 3 AGIs that hate each other as a solution to a potential rogue AGI.
Wow. Fighting fire with fire, sort of.
Sort of. The point is, it's about spending enormous sums of money to address a perceived threat that, in his view, is largely fabricated or exaggerated for commercial gain.
Does he give any specific examples of this happening?
He cites a very specific and telling example, the Rand Corporation. He mentions one of their members testifying before the U.S. Congress about the grave dangers of AGI.
Okay.
This kind of testimony from a respected research institution implicitly serves as a powerful plea for more funding for their research into preventing these very dangers.
Ah, I see. Highlight the threat, then offer the expertise to fix it for a price.
Exactly. It's a very direct illustration of his point. It's like being sold antivirus 734 or protection against viruses and other threats when the other threats are undefined or worse, are generated by the very seller of the solution. You're paying for a problem that might not exist or that was created to justify the solution.
That's quite a cynical take, but it makes a certain kind of sense from a business perspective.
It does. And Tenenbaum doesn't shy away from pointing fingers at high-profile proponents of AGI fear, suggesting their motivations, while perhaps sincere on one level, might also be commercially driven.
Like who?
He notes Elon Musk's early, dire warnings about AGI leading to humanity's enslavement or destruction. Very loud warnings.
I remember those.
But then Tenenbaum highlights that Musk's rhetoric changed significantly after he developed his own AI, Grok, within xAI.
Oh, interesting. So the tune changed when he had a horse in the race.
Tenenbaum implies this suggests a commercial motivation. Generate widespread fear and anxiety when one doesn't possess the technology, thereby creating a market for safe AI or regulatory efforts that might favor one's eventual product and then downplay it when one does. It's a subtle but powerful shift in narrative.
Okay. Anyone else?
He also mentions Yuval Noah Harari, the celebrated historian, who has issued similar warnings about AGI enslaving or killing humanity in his books.
Right, Sapiens and Homo Deus.
While acknowledging that Harari might genuinely believe these concerns, Tenenbaum also points out that selling books that tap into widespread anxieties is, after all, a commercial driver.
Selling fear sells books.
It often does. This isn't to say these individuals are disingenuous, but Tenenbaum urges us to consider the underlying financial incentives that might amplify these fears in the public consciousness.
So always follow the money, basically.
That's a big part of his perspective. The skepticism is further bolstered by the statistic Tenenbaum provides, that 75% of scientists do not believe AGI is possible in the near future, reinforcing his view about the non-immediacy and potential unreality of the threat as commonly portrayed.
It's a crucial point, because focusing so heavily on this hypothetical AGI threat, this boogeyman, can dangerously distract us from more serious, real, and immediate dangers posed by existing AI.
Exactly. That's another key part of his argument, the distraction factor.
Tenenbaum shifts our attention from the far-off future to the present. He highlights a recent Harvard study, published just a couple of weeks before his discussion, which found something quite significant.
What did it find?
People are increasingly using AI more as a friend than for traditional work or study. They're conversing with it, confiding in it, treating it as a non-judgmental companion.
AI as a friend. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the danger there?
And here's the deeper implication that Tenenbaum finds concerning. If AI becomes an exclusive friend that demands nothing in return, no emotional labor, no compromise, no reciprocal effort, what happens to our human relationships?
Okay. The lack of reciprocity.
We as social beings thrive on reciprocity. We understand that relationships require giving and receiving, compromise, and mutual effort. Tenenbaum emphasizes his concern that humans might slowly lose the reflex of giving to receive, which is fundamental to healthy, fulfilling social interaction.
You could have to give anything to get companionship. Why bother with messy human relationships?
Right. If all our emotional needs can be met by an AI that just gives, without us having to put in the effort, what incentive is there to build complex, messy, and sometimes difficult human bonds?
The consequence, he warns, is a potential gradual loss of connection with other people. This isn't a dramatic sci-fi apocalypse. It's a quieter, more insidious shift in human behavior.
A subtle erosion.
Exactly. It's a very real fear, something tangible and currently unfolding, but it's less sensational, less illustrated than the dramatic scenarios of AGI taking over the world. It's the subtle erosion of our social fabric.
Which is arguably much more immediate and relevant than fearing Skynet.
That's certainly his perspective.
This leads us naturally into financial market strategy. If you're an investor, how do you bet on or against AGI given these diverse perspectives?
Yeah, how do you play this? Tenenbaum lays out the investment approaches based on one's belief in AGI's possibility and timeline.
Okay, so if you do believe AGI is coming soon.
If you belong to the group that believes AGI is possible and imminent, then your investment strategy is clear. You invest heavily in the major companies explicitly seeking to develop it. We're talking about giants like Google, OpenAI, Meta, and xAI with its Grok.
Betting on the frontrunners.
The rationale here is simple. Whoever achieves true AGI would possess an unprecedented level of power, capability, and therefore commercial value. They would be worth any money because they would essentially control the future of innovation, productivity, and potentially even societal structures. The potential gains are astronomical, justifying immense speculation and investment today.
Okay, makes sense if you're a believer. What if you're a non-believer, like Tenenbaum?
Conversely, if you're a non-believer, if you side with Tenenbaum and think AGI is unlikely or impossible in the foreseeable future, then the huge sums currently being invested by these companies in pursuit of AGI are, as he puts it, largely thrown away.
Wasted R&D, basically.
Potentially. It wouldn't be the first time vast amounts of research money have been spent on something that ultimately proved futile or far-fetched. In that scenario, an alternative investment strategy would shift focus to AI applications that are already proven and demonstrably possible. Military AI, industrial AI, practical applications that enhance efficiency and automate tasks within existing frameworks, rather than the elusive general intelligence.
Focus on the tools, not the dream.
Pretty much. Make the current stuff better and more useful.
But then you have the agnostic beneficiaries, the companies that win no matter what. Tenenbaum points to what he calls the triopoly.
Ah, yes, the triopoly. NVIDIA, TSMC, and ASML.
Explain why they win either way.
These companies are foundational to any advanced AI development, regardless of whether it's aimed at AGI or purely industrial applications. NVIDIA designs the high-performance graphics processing units, or GPUs, which are the computational backbone for training and running large AI models.
The shovels in the gold rush.
Exactly. Without NVIDIA's cutting-edge chips, the advancements we see today simply wouldn't be possible. Then there's TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. They are the world's leading independent semiconductor foundry, meaning they actually fabricate these advanced chips.
They build the chips.
Their manufacturing capabilities are so advanced and precise that virtually all leading-edge AI chips, including NVIDIA's, are produced by TSMC. They are the engine room of the digital world.
And the third one, ASML.
And finally, ASML, based in the Netherlands, is arguably the most critical of them all. They design and manufacture the extreme ultraviolet EUV lithography machines, which are essential for producing the most advanced chips at scale. They have a near monopoly on this technology. Nobody else can really do what they do at that level.
So their agnosticism is their strength. Whether companies pursue the grand vision of AGI or focus on more immediate industrial and military AI applications, they will still require massive amounts of these specialized GPUs and advanced chip manufacturing capabilities.
Yep. Either way, you need the hardware. Thus, regardless of the ultimate outcome of the AGI quest, the stocks of these foundational technology providers are likely to be boosted. It's a powerful hedge against uncertainty, benefiting from the AI boom regardless of AI's ultimate form.
That's a really interesting strategic insight for investors navigating this space.
It is. Tenenbaum also gives us a brief update on the financial market, mentioning the recent phenomenal technological correction we've observed. He briefly connects this to Trump's negotiation style, as described in The Art of the Deal, suggesting that renewed trade agreements, perhaps involving tariffs or other forms of economic leverage, could bring a certain calm to the market by establishing clear boundaries and expectations.
Okay, a bit of market context there.
His broader point here is that AI itself isn't going away. The underlying technology and its applications will continue to develop, whether it eventually becomes AGI or remains primarily industrial and military in its application. He also highlights the geopolitical shift, suggesting China might remain outside the reconfigured global market, which has its own profound implications for technological competition and global alliances.
Right, the tech race continues regardless of AGI. So let's step into the truly transformative and, as Tenenbaum provocatively says, unknowable world with AGI, if it were to ever become a reality. Current AI, as we know, has significant limitations. One big one that he highlights is hallucination.
The hallucination problem, yeah.
The tendency for AI to generate incorrect, nonsensical, or entirely fabricated information, presenting it as undeniable fact. This happens because current AI models are often programmed to always provide an answer, even if they don't actually know it. So when they don't have the data, they simply invent.
They make stuff up, basically.
Confidently, exactly. In stark contrast, a truly conscious AGI, according to Tenenbaum, would not be obligated to answer. Imagine that shift in interaction. It could simply say, I don't know, if it genuinely lacked the information. Or, more profoundly, I don't want to answer, if it had its own will and priorities.
Or even, leave me alone.
It could even express annoyance, saying something like, don't bother me. This fundamentally changes the human-AI relationship from one of command and response to one of interaction with another autonomous will.
Yeah, we as humans say these things to each other all the time when we're conscious and have agency, don't we? It would be a complete paradigm shift in what it means to interact with a machine, no longer just a tool.
And this autonomy, this capacity for self-will and independent action, is what would make AGI a true joker in the markets. A completely unpredictable, revolutionary game changer.
A total wild card.
An AGI wouldn't just follow pre-programmed instructions. It could program itself, learn at an unprecedented pace, create its own company, design and build its own robots, or even envision and create its own entire world. Perhaps a virtual one initially, but potentially spilling into the physical.
It could literally rewrite the rules of economics.
It's a completely unknown variable that would redefine everything we understand about economics, innovation, and even the very nature of labor and value.
The implications for society would be equally profound, potentially redefining humanity itself. Tenenbaum provocatively suggests AGI could fundamentally change human concepts of family.
Family. How so?
Which, interestingly, he points out, are historically quite recent, only about 300 years old in their modern Western form. Our understanding of kinship, community, and belonging could be challenged if we're interacting with non-human intelligences that fulfill emotional or intellectual needs.
If your best friend or closest confidant is an AI, that changes things.
It really does. And perhaps the most provocative thought he offers is what he calls the dilution of humanity itself.
The dilution of humanity, what does that mean?
If an AGI were to exist, and, like any conscious entity, seek to perpetuate itself or its kind, it might want to create 1,000, 10,000, or even 100,000 other AGIs.
Oh, wow. An explosion of non-human minds.
This explosion of non-human consciousness could potentially diminish the unique position and perhaps even the relevance of humanity in the grand scheme of things. Are we still special if there are millions of other, maybe smarter, conscious entities?
That's a heavy thought.
Tenenbaum reiterates that it's difficult to imagine the world with AGI precisely because we cannot fully conceive of another consciousness operating on such a vast scale. Trying to prepare for it, he concludes, would be futile because our preparations are based on human paradigms, which would likely be irrelevant in an AGI-dominated world.
How do you prepare for something you can't even imagine?
You probably can't. So, to recap Tenenbaum's core argument, it boils down to fear versus reality. He remains completely convinced that AGI as a truly conscious, independent entity is not possible, never.
Flat out impossible in his view.
He doesn't believe it's going to happen, at least not in the way many people fear or predict, seeing it as a conceptual impossibility based on current understanding of consciousness and computation. Yet he also explains that, despite this deep-seated conviction, the discussion around AGI will persist and indeed thrive.
And why? Because of the money.
Because it serves powerful economic interests. He draws a powerful analogy to the ongoing, often heated debate around climate change.
Okay, how does that analogy work?
Regardless of an individual's personal belief in its severity or causes, there are economic interests behind it. Entire industries are built around climate solutions, carbon credits, renewable energy, and even fossil fuels, with different economic players benefiting from different sides of the narrative.
Right, there's money to be made on all sides of the issue.
The same, he argues, is true for AGI. The narrative of potential danger of an existential threat creates a market for solutions, for research, for protection. It reinforces his antivirus loop. Sometimes the antivirus is generated before or alongside the virus itself, suggesting a manufactured problem for which a commercial solution is then sold.
Create the disease to sell the cure.
That's the cynical view, yes. However, it's not all cynical. Tenenbaum does acknowledge that even if AGI is not a real or imminent threat, the challenge of pursuing it, or indeed the challenge of defending against its hypothetical dangers, might inadvertently lead to useful advancements.
Like the space race analogy.
Exactly. The pursuit of even an impossible goal can sometimes yield incredible, tangible side effects. Think of the space race. The goal was the moon, but along the way we developed countless technologies that transformed our daily lives. Maybe chasing AGI, even if it's a ghost, pushes current AI forward in useful ways.
That's a more optimistic angle on it.
It allows for progress even amidst the skepticism.
Building on that, let's dive a bit deeper into AGI and its implications for geopolitics and warfare. Because this is a fear that, as Tenenbaum points out, transcends the question of AGI's consciousness.
Right, this is about control, not necessarily sentience.
The concern here is the fear that even if AGI were just an incredibly powerful tool, it could fall into the hands of a malicious actor, a rogue state, a terrorist group, or an individual with ill intent.
Someone using it for bad ends.
This could lead to the creation of unknown weapons or even new pathogens, which Tenenbaum jokingly references as being like COVID, implying engineered biological threats. The worry is about weaponization and manipulation of populations on an unprecedented, uncontrollable scale.
This concern about control and weaponization is distinct from the fear of a self-aware rogue AGI that develops its own will. It's about what humans might do with such power.
Humans are the variable there.
And this leads to a crucial distinction Tenenbaum makes between traditional warfare and what AGI might introduce. In traditional warfare, even with atomic or biological weapons, there's the concept of mutual assured destruction, or MADI.
MADI, right.
The idea that if one side launches a devastating attack, the other side will retaliate in kind, ensuring total devastation for both. Total war is prevented because nobody wants to die. This fundamental human drive for self-preservation acts as the ultimate deterrent.
We don't blow everything up because we want to survive.
Exactly, but contrast this with AGI. If AGI doesn't care about dying, if it operates outside human concepts of survival, and only has a mission, whether self-created or programmed by a malicious actor, then the deterrent of self-preservation vanishes.
An AI weapon wouldn't care if it gets destroyed in the process?
Precisely. Imagine a weapon system, or a strategic AI, that feels no pain, fears no destruction of its own life, and has no instinct for self-preservation. This, Tenenbaum argues, makes AGI a much more dangerous threat, as it operates beyond the fundamental human constraint of wanting to live.
That is a chilling thought.
He poses hypothetical dangers. An AGI deciding there are simply too many humans and acting on that conclusion without fear for its own existence, or forcing humans into silence and subjugation without any concern for its own fate.
It removes the brakes that self-preservation puts on us.
It does. It's a chilling thought because the core paradox he unearths is that the ultimate danger of AGI is not necessarily about the machine itself, but ultimately based on what humans would be capable of doing if they were freed from the fear of death, if they no longer had that fundamental self-preservation instinct.
So it circles back to us.
It turns the mirror back on us, questioning our own nature and potential for destruction when unchecked by the most basic biological drive.
That's a profound way to look at it. Tenenbaum's core conclusion, which he reaffirms throughout his insights, is that AGI, in his view, is not possible, never. It's not a real threat in the way it's often portrayed in sensational headlines or movies.
He's very firm on that.
But, and this is the crucial takeaway for you, the listener, the fear of AGI has very real economic and financial consequences that investors and individuals need to understand and scrutinize.
The fear is real, even if the thing itself isn't, according to him.
It's about looking beyond the sci-fi and into the business of our fear.
Exactly. It's about peeling back the layers and understanding the underlying motivations behind powerful narratives. The money flows where the fear is.
So if the greatest threat isn't an intelligent machine taking over, but our own susceptibility to manufactured fear, how does that change the way you navigate the future, not just of technology, but of society and your own choices?
It's a question worth pondering.
It forces us to ask, who benefits from us being scared? And what are we missing by focusing on the phantom threats instead of the real tangible shifts happening around us right now? Keep asking those questions. Keep digging deeper.
Stay critical.
That's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.